Hey everyone, JP here from the Biz Dojo. Just want to let you know about Newsly. It's an audio app for iOS and Android. It picks up web articles about some of the most trending topics, and then it reads them to you in a natural human voice. Much like this beautiful voice right here. Anyways, for the first time in the history of the internet, the web is listenable. You can browse articles from topics you choose and start playing. So stop scrolling, just start listening. And they have podcasts too, so you can listen to us there, as well as a whole bunch of other podcasts from over 40 countries. So check it out, download Newsly from newsly.me, or just click the link in the description for the podcast and use promo code B1Z2021. That'll get you a month free premium description. Nothing like it. Check it out, newsly.me.
This episode is powered by Airdrie DQ Grill and Chill, owned and operated by local entrepreneurs. Check out one of their 3 Airdrie locations today and pick up a blizzard, ice cream cake, or dilly bar. The Biz Dojo is also brought to you by Beyond a Beaten Path. If you're on the lookout for a personalized gift, head to beyondabeatenpath.ca and get started on your custom creation. Beyond a Beaten Path. Personalize it, because everything else is boring.
So I made my triumphant return to the gym last week.
Oh, how was that?
Much better than I was expecting.
I haven't been to a gym in probably far too long, but
I had not been since early March 2020, and I don't know. I was worried. I was a little nervous walking in for the first time because, especially that I'd never been to this gym, so I didn't know where any of the equipment was.
New gym in a new time.
Yeah, like I'd finally gotten like my bearings at the YMCA in Seton before we moved. I felt good. I knew where everything was. I could kind of make my way around and. Then I came here and, I did not know where anything was. So that was probably my biggest challenge on the first day, was figuring out where things were and then also following along with the workout. So as I mentioned, I think last week I started a new program working with a fellow by the name of Pat Woodcock. He was a 8-year CFL pro and also some preseason time in the NFL.
I'm expecting a bulky Seth soon.
Something. So anyway, so I'm trying to follow along with the program. I'm trying to find my way around the gym. And then you also just have like those thoughts in your head, like, I don't know, just
the tarps off thoughts. People are watching me. I mean, it's a different time, like we were saying, like I'm sure there was some of that going through your head.
There was some of that. And I think I was really cautious that I didn't want to hurt myself. So I didn't want to overdo it on anything. And I was trying to make sure that my posture was correct. And I was doing some things I'd never done before, which gives a little natural anxiety. And I just mostly wanted to make sure I didn't hurt myself. So then I was overthinking things a little bit. But I guess my point of all of this is I did not realize how beneficial to my mental health going to the gym was and taking care of my nutrition last week. Man, like I feel like a different person. Like I felt good. We've been talking about that. I felt good, but I'm starting to tap into another level just in a week that I didn't know was there. And I think the biggest thing is my mental health, like the focus, the positivity, the not getting distracted and sort of spiraling on things. Like I just feel better.
Yeah. I started hockey this week. That's a thing that started back up too. And I feel so much better as well. Just, it's amazing how much a little bit of a workout can impact your mental health.
Well, and I think it's partially that. I mean, we've managed to manufacture some of that best we can during COVID, using apps and home gyms and stuff like that. But I think it's also just like getting up with a purpose and knowing you have a thing to do later and sort of planning for it and then going and in your world, like you get to be all in on the puck and your movements and I don't know. You're just like, you're not distracted.
Movement. After 2 years of not playing, there's a lot less movement than there used to be.
Fair. And now that's something you can work on. You got a little more purpose out of that, right? Like, but I think just being able to remove ourselves from just being home and all the digital tools. And I, again, was not expecting as much of a mental health bump up or uplift as I got in just 1 week.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of focus on mental health recently. And I mean, you and I included in that, obviously. We talk about it with each other. We talk about it on a podcast. We live and breathe it all day, every day in our jobs. And I love it. I love where things are going. We're nowhere near where we need to be. in my opinion. But there's a lot of work that's been done, and I think there's a lot more work to do. And that's in part, I think, where we wanted to go with Jess in today's episode.
As you mentioned, we've talked a lot about mental health, and, back when we did Chopping It Up, I think maybe we had some deeper discussions on it than some of the pods, but it's been an ongoing topic, mental, physical health, and how it all kind of intertwines. And I think it was really interesting to talk to Jess because we got into from a woman's perspective and some of the challenges they go through. And I learned a lot, in particular about postpartum depression and some of the symptoms and signs. And it's a lot. There's a lot going on there. And, as a husband and a father and a brother and a son, I don't know that I had a full appreciation for, some of the challenges.
I think that's the biggest thing with mental health is you can't possibly know. Like, it's easy to see when someone breaks their arm, you kind of get a sense of what's happened, what they're going through, how difficult it can be to open a door. But when someone has a mental health challenge, opening a door might not be that easy. It might it can be really tough. And especially when it's something that you may never experience in your life, simply based on gender or ability to experience that exact thing and how it came to be. So like postpartum depression, you hear about it, but I think, and I've heard this from a few people, but I think a lot of people feel like once you get over it, once you get past feeling it and your kid grows up a little bit and you feel a little better, you're good. Everything's fine, but it lingers. It's there. It never goes away.
I think one of the things that really stuck with me from this episode was she sort of made this comment almost in passing. And it was along the lines of like, she just wanted someone to ask her how she was or just like see her. Because she was hiding a lot of the symptoms and just going on like everything was okay. And it just got me reflecting, how many moments have we been around a loved one or, someone we work with, whoever is going through some stuff and they look totally normal. It doesn't appear that anything is wrong. You don't want to pry. You don't want to get into someone's personal life per se, but sometimes just saying, hey, how are you with the right tone and intention can make all the difference for somebody.
You had that story a few weeks back on the pod where you had stopped and talked to a woman who had recently lost someone and just needed the conversation. Like even just that, just being in your community and having a chat with someone you don't know can mean a lot.
I think, just being open, and you never know what someone's going through, and kindness,
And on the flip side, like it's so cathartic to get it out. And I mean, Jess did that in the form of a book, which not everyone's going to do. That's quite a step. But just for people who have something, like having a conversation can go a long way. So,
on the way into the pod here, is there someone maybe you haven't talked to in a little while that you'd like to reconnect with? Or, a way that you could make someone's day just by a friendly hello? Maybe take a minute to reflect on that, and we'll get into the episode here with Jess. Welcome to the Biz Dojo with Seth and JP. This week, we're joined by Jessica Friesen. Welcome to the dojo, Jessica.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing fantastic. We're on the tail end of summer out here in Alberta, and it is getting very fall-like very quickly.
Yeah, here in Niagara as well. We're in for some thunderstorms today, and we had some wicked ones last night, which always means that the weather's changing. So I'm pretty happy that the cooler temperatures are coming. I'm not a summer person, but
I like the fall. That first few weeks when like crisp air and you kind of get outside and it's sweater weather. I'm all in.
Yeah, it has so many
sweater
hoodies.
Weather. Yeah,
sweater weather.
Yeah, jeans and a sweater and sandals. That's my favorite.
I dig it. So thanks for joining us. Really excited to get into the conversation here. Doing a little bit of research on yourself. You're an author, a mom, a CEO, many hats that you wear. But kind of curious, how do you introduce yourself to people?
So I usually say, "Hey, I'm Jess." It's funny, Jessica sounds so formal to me, and I don't identify as a very formal type person. So Professionally, I go by Jessica, but I'm Jess, and I've always been Jess. But I do a bunch of different things professionally. So I am the third generation owner operator and first female of my family business. We have a petroleum business based in Niagara Falls, Ontario. And so we have 14 gas stations, a chain of convenience stores, and we do petroleum delivery throughout the Niagara region. So we have one of the last truly independently owned petroleum businesses in Canada. That's what I do in my normal life. That's what my business card says. I'm also a chartered director. So I sit on the boards for a local hospital and for the Niagara Parks Commission. I'm also a newly published author. I wrote a memoir about my journey with postpartum depression after the birth of my son 14 years ago. Like you said, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, housekeeper, taxi driver, all those things that fall in that bucket too. So I wear a bunch of different hats, but I like it because it doesn't let me get bored.
No, that's awesome. Just reading, maybe starting on the business side of things and reading a little bit about Gale's Gas Bar. So it would have been your grandfather who started the company with one truck, one gas station back in the late 60s. I'm curious, was his vision to grow it to something like what it is right now? And surely along the way, there must have been some interest from some of the bigger, companies to maybe acquire. And how did you get to this point to be one of the only Canadian independently owned gas stations? That's such a...
So, I think I wish I had that conversation with my grandfather back. He passed in 2010. And I don't think any grandchild really thinks about actually proactively sitting down with their grandparent and picking their brain over all of these things that happened before we came here. But knowing what he was like and knowing what I've been able to collect from my father and my aunt and my uncles, I believe it was just that he didn't want to have a boss. He had driven truck for Champion Oil since the 50s. So he was a driver. He did distribute the petroleum himself. And I think just being that true entrepreneur, he wanted to go into business for himself and be his own boss and see where it went. And that's how he started. We started with the petroleum delivery. He bought the first location, not because it had a gas station on it, but because it had a truck wash on it. And it just happened to have a gas station as well. My dad is the youngest of four, and I'm going to get this wrong, but I think there's 13 years between him and his oldest brother. So in the late 60s, my uncle would have been in his early 20s. And so they worked at the station and they really just kind of put it all together. And that side of the company grew through the 70s. And then my dad came in the 80s and he grew the distribution side of things and the stations as well, but really focused on the distribution side of things. And it just, things just kind of happen. I think in business, you don't always really know what you're doing. You just kind of do what makes sense and what you think is the right thing to do. And that's really, I think, what we've all done. Be as educated about the industry as possible, but really know our customers. And that's one thing that I think sets us apart from other petroleum companies is we are based in Niagara. We are Niagara focused. We are incredibly involved in our community all the way through the generations. And we know our customers, or we really try to know our customers. Niagara's on a big shift right now with people from the GTA coming down and whatnot. So it's changing a bit, but we roll with the punches and we change as our customers' needs change. And that's important. That's what being independent allows us to do. That we can do what needs to be done at the turn of a hat.
One of the things you said there was staying, informed and knowledgeable about the industry. And maybe just to touch on the reason why this particular topic piqued my interest is my great grandfather actually had a gas station and a fuel truck back in Rocky Mountain House, probably the same time frame. And he ended up, I believe, selling it and then retiring in the Okanagan. So I've always been curious, to learn more about that. Unfortunately, he passed a long time ago. So like you said, you never really get that chance when you're younger to sit down and pick their brain on it. But I think that independence, that entrepreneurial spirit, such an awesome thing. And to see it like not only get started in the 60s, but carry on to 2021 is amazing. But when, in terms of, staying in tune with the industry, is there any like common misconceptions that, your customers or people have about the fuel industry that you come across regularly?
That we're all making tons of money. And anybody in this industry will tell you it's a cutthroat business. There's not many other industries. Can't think of one off the top of my head where you have the price of the product posted outside so that someone can just drive by and have a look and then go to the next one and to the next one. And in 5 minutes, figure out where you're going to go if you're not loyal to one. Usually it takes more effort than that. So it makes it very easy for individuals to go wherever they want. And that's the beauty of the industry, but it's also very challenging because on the retail side of petroleum, we work with very slim margins. We really focus on volume. And that is something that, yes, price obviously has something to do with it, but I believe, and it's worked out for us for almost 60 years, and I hope it works out for the next 60 years. I believe that our community involvement and our good name and our customer service go a long way. I can't compete with the big guys. I can't compete with Esso or Petrocan, but what I can do is ensure that my customer service is top notch. And we run service excellence programs within my company. We can make sure that we treat our staff, who are also members of our community, and their families are members of our community, with the utmost respect and discretion. I am the only living wage champion in the petroleum industry in Ontario, and that's something that I'm very proud of. It's something that I committed to a couple of years ago. And it's something that, especially through COVID, it really sets us aside from everyone else. We don't have problems hiring staff, whereas many of the minimum wage employers are finding it very challenging right now. Now, not everybody can be a living wage provider. It's very tough. It was a big decision to make. But if you can do it, then I think that the opportunities for your staff to buy into the company, to be loyal to the company, to really have that affection for the company, that's where it's at, because then they provide excellent customer service to your customers. So I think that's crucial.
You've talked a bit about commitment to community, and I know that's something that also comes through in your book. Right from the very start of your book, you talk about how you are actually presenting to a group. Where does that come from? Is that something that's been passed down to you from, seeing your father and your grandfather, or is that something that you've developed along the way, a combination? Where does that building come from?
I think it's a combination. When I was a kid, my parents were always very community involved, more so than my grandparents even. We were always going to different events and volunteering our time. And when I was a teenager, I began volunteering at the local hospital and for different sports or events that were happening within Niagara. But I think that I took it a little bit differently, because I went into healthcare after high school. I went to university, and I'm a registered nurse as well. I still have my designation. So I just like to mention that every now and then to remind my husband, really. But I went into healthcare because I really wanted to help people at a very fundamental level. And I wanted to see people improve and see people get better and see people walk out of the hospital or provide them with a dignified death if it came to that. And it did quite frequently. For me, it was always about helping people. I think that my goal in life was always to make the world a better place. And one of the mantras that I live my life by is to make sure that my part of the world is better because I was in it. I want to be able to look back in 40 or 50 years and know that I've done everything possible to make the world a better place for my children, for my children's children, for my community, for the world, if I get that opportunity. And I think that with my book, this is the first opportunity I've had to really stretch my legs and to really try to stretch outside of Niagara. I mean, even with you guys based in Calgary, you know, I love doing these kind of podcasts because I feel that this is a healthcare and being good to people and being good community leaders. It's not a pigeonhole. It's not just for one area of the world. It is a global phenomenon. And, you know, you can make a difference in the world if you try. And why the heck not?
Why the heck not? I love that. that was kind of how we started this podcast, to be honest. It was, why the heck not? Let's see what kind of difference we can make, if not just for ourselves. If we can, you know, influence one person along the way, we're going to call it a success. So love that.
Well, and that's kind of what brought me into business. You know, my dad asked me if I wanted, I had just had my daughter, my second child. She was a month old, and he called me up and said, hey, I've bought 2 new locations and they've got convenience stores in them. And I know you're looking for something to get you out of the house. And do you want to help me out and set these up? And I thought, why the heck not? and it ended up being a complete career change. So, you know, I think it's important to always be open to opportunities and flesh them out.
You talked a bit, well, in your book, you talked a bit about how you grew up in a fairly affluent neighborhood. You went to school surrounded by people who grew up in an affluent neighborhood. And then when you hit high school, you started to realize just how privileged you actually were coming up. How much did that play into your decision to like not work towards the business and to head into healthcare and to do something a little bit different for yourself?
That was huge. It was huge. There were a couple of things that went into that. One, it truly struck me when I realized just how different I was than some of the other kids, because I grew up with kids that were not as well off as my family was. They were my parents' friends and whatnot, and they're good people, and I still know them, and they're wonderful people. But I never grew up with blinders on like that. Everybody was just, you know, they were my friends. I guess my parents never raised me with that mentality because they had not grown up with that mentality. They didn't grow up in an affluent neighborhood, so they didn't raise us like that. I grew up with Walmart clothes and Byway clothes. Love Byway, miss that store. So you don't realize your biases until they are pointed out to you, even if you have the best of intentions. So there was certainly that, but there was also, I grew up, and my dad's going to laugh at this if he hears this because I say it all the time. I grew up being known as Bob Gale's daughter. So the semantics behind that are my dad is Bob Gale. My grandfather was Bob Gale. With the petroleum industry being a staple business in Niagara and with their community involvement and having 2 generations of Bob Gale running the company, they were a name that a lot of people knew in the community. And I really felt like I didn't have my own identity. I was Bob Gale's daughter. And I wanted to get the heck out of Niagara to establish myself and to become my own person and to earn people's respect based on my own merit. That was incredibly important to me. So I went to London, Ontario. I went to the University of Western Ontario. I went into healthcare and got my registered nurse's designation. And then I came back to Niagara simply for the reason that I was engaged to a guy that was from Niagara. And I really did succeed in that mission of becoming my own person and establishing myself within the healthcare field. Once I went into business, I kind of took a few steps back because all of a sudden I am working for my dad, or I was working for my dad at the time. And again, I was known as Bob Gale's daughter, but I keep telling him, and it's happening now. And he now gets, oh, you're Jessica Friesen's dad. And he has to tell me every time, which is fantastic. I love it. So, yeah.
Full circle. I love it.
Yeah. But yeah, so community involvement was a huge thing to me growing up and all through my life. There's nothing more important than the people that you surround yourself with and how you treat other people.
Just sort of hitting on one of the points you made there around when you were growing up, not differentiating people based on their social status or economic status. I mean, having been a kid who was, I'm going to just say like a poor kid in a big family who didn't have much. And when you think back, like the people who were nice to you, like it made all the difference in the world. And, that's something I try to impart on my kids. Like, it doesn't matter where someone came from, like anything, just be nice to people. And, that'll serve you well. And I just wonder, how do you approach that with your kids? Like, how do you help keep them grounded and foster that, just being there for people and being nice to people? Do you have any tactics that you use for that?
I can tell you what I did. I don't know if it's the right way to do things, but it was something that I was very conscious of. It was something that I was very explicit with my kids. And so far it's worked out really, really well. My kids are both very loving, very independent, both leaders. I'll focus on my daughter in particular, because I think as females, it's easy females are different than guys. I like guys because I'm a guy's girl. Okay. More than a girl's girl. Guys you have a disagreement with guys and you hit the nail on the head and you move on. With girls, it's not always so easy, at least in my experience. With girls, things tend to get a little bit more dramatic. Things tend to get a little bit more complicated. And my daughter is not like that at all. She's just like me. We wear our heart on our sleeve. You know exactly where you're coming from, which means you either like or don't like us as well. And I'm fine with that. You're not gonna get along with everybody in the world. But one of the things, I'll give you an example. We have some very, very good friends. And about 10 years ago, their son was diagnosed with autism. And we had really just met them. And my daughter, Cameron, was in school with the little boy. And I had to explain to my kids what autism was and what that meant to them and what that meant to us. And I said to my kids are not fighters. I don't ever advocate for, taking blows with people. But my thing with my kids has always been, you protect yourselves. So I never want to hear that you take the first punch, but if somebody is coming at you, you get one shot, kid, and you better level them. And then you're running, right? Because I'm not gonna raise kids who are not able to defend themselves either, right? And I said to my kids, that goes for the little boy as well. If somebody is going after him, if somebody is making fun of him, you stand up for him. It's important that you stand up for your friends, that you're honest with your friends, that you're blunt with your friends, that they know exactly where they're coming from. And if they can't handle that, then they're not a real friend. But that you also stand up for your friends, especially the ones that need it more. And now, 10 years later, my daughter is in grade 7, and the teachers have emailed me, and I actually kept a copy of the email, because they say, she is such a good friend to him. She is such a, bright light in his school day. And I know that they actually put her in classes with him because it calms him down, and she advocates for him. And it's not just him. He's just one example. But, my son took me literally when I had that conversation with him about, you get one shot, kid. And there was one day, I'll never forget it. The principal called me, and he was in grade 3, and one of the boys was being mean to him and pushing him and pushing him and pushing him. And he hauled off and slugged the kid, and the kid hit the floor. And I said to the principal, so, the kid was coming after my son. And she said, yep. I said, so what's the problem? And she said, nope, no problem. Just wanted to let you know. And I said, okay, great. Because, in this day and age, absolutely use your words, but at some point they're children, and you can't not defend yourself either. So I don't know what you guys feel on that, but that's always been my strategy is stand up for yourself and what's right.
My little guy's 2. Hopefully he's not quite at the needing to defend himself phase yet. I don't know what goes on at day home, but
baby fight club.
Yeah, no? Baby fight club. I honestly, I hope that that's how I can raise Declan to be the same way, to be able to defend himself when need be, to try and talk it out, to try and work through it, but also be able to stand up for himself. That is exactly how I plan to raise Declan. We'll see how it goes, but that's my plan right now.
Yeah. Well, my son just started grade 5, and he's such a loving kid naturally, but like from day one, I've tried to coach him to defend himself, right? Like, and there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. A last resort, maybe like if someone's coming at you, you got to be able to defend yourself. So we put him in things like Taekwondo and, just some basic defense skills, because you never know what's going to happen. But, ultimately, if you can use your words, or if you can walk away from a situation, learn the difference between reaction response, like I try to impart that, but at the end of the day, you got to defend yourself. And I think the other thing that I offer to him as advice is, if somebody else is being picked on, especially, someone in your class that's getting bullied or, not doing so well, help them, be there for them, be kind to them.
Yeah.
And I've seen that approach. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's it. You got to be able to defend yourself, helping others, being kind. Like,
I know adults who need that message. Like, honestly, I know so many adults.
It's an oversimplification, but like at the end of the day, like what else is there? Like, if you're kind to people, like if you start from that place, good things happen.
Well, and now my son, I'm aging myself. My son just started high school yesterday. And he is the gentlest, calmest. According to my daughter, he's uber popular. The girls like him. Like he's a great kid, but he plays hockey and he's on defense and he's a little goon on the ice. And I said to my husband, I don't know how this happens. Like he morphs into this mutant on the ice and lets go of all of his aggression. And I guess that's kind of the point when he's on D, he's there to defend the goalie. But I don't know, he comes off and I'm just like, I don't know who you are. But no, they are good kids. So, it worked. That advice, I got that advice from somebody and I raised my kids with that, and it worked out really well for me.
I know that, just in doing a little bit of looking, and I'm sure we'll get into your book, but being a mental health advocate and having teenagers, I mean, it scares the hell out of me thinking about my kids being teenagers. I still got some time. They're, 5 and 10, but, eventually that's going to come
quickly. Yeah.
How are you navigating that? I mean, with mental health, maybe more on the forefront than it was when we were growing up, or at least the terminology is clearer and the resources are more available. But just curious, how are you navigating that? So
I have really tried to keep very good communication with my kids. So when I was growing up, my parents would say, no, you can't do that, but not give any reason. I try to explain all of my decisions to my children as much as possible so that they understand where I'm coming from and why they can't do something, or, why I want them to do something else. To me, it's all about keeping the lines of communication open and taking them seriously, even though you think that something might be totally hokey. Well, here's an example. My daughter came to me with a concern last week because she feels that she may have ADHD. Okay. This is active, but this is honest right now. She feels like she may have ADHD. And I'm certain that she just doesn't like math. Okay. It's the only class that she has a problem with, but she's researched this. She's investigated it. She feels very strongly about it. So, I take her seriously, and I called the doctor, and we have a appointment for later on this month, just in case I'm wrong, and I think it's very important to take your kids seriously and to let them vet things like we would as adults. I mean, if I thought I had cancer, I'd be going to the doctor and letting them make the decision. I'm just her mom. I'm the one that's supposed to help her navigate through these years and through her life, and to help her make the best decisions for herself, as the best decisions possible. It's not my role to make the decisions for her, unless it's something that is safety related or, what have you. So I really pick my battles with my kids. I really try to not worry about the things that aren't important, and to put a lot of stress onto the things that are important. I don't know. Another example is my daughter dresses like, whoa, like she has always had her own little fashion sense, and whatever, she's 12 years old now. She can dress however she wants to. She's been doing it since she was 5. And my rule was always, as long as it's weather appropriate, then have at her, kid. And I'm kind of hoping that she can get all of her, crazy bad fashion sense out of her before she becomes a real teenager, because some of it's really scary.
Is that why you like fall? You're like, all right, it's getting into colder weather.
Yeah.
Force her into some certain clothes.
Yeah, I mean, she's got some great outfits, but some of them I just look at, go, wow, I don't know what you're thinking, but have at her.
Hey, thanks for calling the Biz Dojo. What can we do for you?
Yeah, hi. I was wondering if I could order some coffee, please.
Oh, of course. Were you looking for the Master's Medium Roast or maybe some Dojo Dark Roast?
Oh, yeah, I'll take some of each. Oh, shoot, hold on a sec. Yeah, what can I get for you? So, venti, soy, tazo, chai, latte. Coming right up. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'll take a Master's Medium and a Dojo Dark. They're so good. Best coffee I've ever had by a long shot.
Aw, thank you. Well, we'll get that order out to you right away.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Bill, what did I say about being on your phone while working?
I gotta get back to work.
Get back to the register. We got a lineup. We're running out of venti cups.
If you're looking for a great cup of coffee, save your bucks and reach for the star. Biz Dojo brand coffee. We're ethically sourced and Canadian roasted, so you can be sure that it's going to be an incredible taste. Just send an email to coffee@thebizdojo.com and we'll get you started.
Hello, this is Ming. I'm the coach at Edmonton Stingers, and you're listening to Biz Dojo.
I know there was a number of times in the book where you actually talked about naming your daughter and the importance that the name had for you. And how are you feeling about that naming choice now that you have a daughter who is wildly independent in all of the things that you were hoping to get out of the name that you chose?
She's exactly who I wish I had been at her age. She is an amazing little girl, fiercely independent, incredibly smart, kind, caring. She's just, everybody loves their kids. Everybody thinks their kids are wonderful. I am no different. My daughter both of my kids are great, but my daughter just is absolutely fantastic. But you're right. I named her Cameron. It's Camryn, just to feminize it a little bit. And I named her that intentionally because I wanted to give her a bit of an ambiguous name so that people couldn't make snap judgment or have her followed by any kind of stereotype because she was named Jessica or Jennifer or Stephanie. If you're talking about a Cameron Friesen, you don't necessarily know if it's a boy or a girl. And I think that I know how hard it was for me being a female, especially in the petroleum industry. So any kind of leg up that I can give my daughter, I will.
So many things hit there. I think one of the things that I went to is like, love my kids both so much, but my daughter, she's wired different. Like, you cannot tell her that she can't do something or help her. Like, she's 4 years old. And over the course of the last month, because with COVID, we didn't really go swimming for the better part of 2 years. So she never really swam. She taught herself how to swim. Like, just literally take this life jacket off me. I'm going to figure it out. And she has completely taught herself how to swim without a life jacket. And I just see like this drive that applied to anything, she's going to do unbelievable things. And I'm just like, how do I harness that? How do I make sure that light doesn't go out over the next 10, 15 years? And
that's what it's all about. Because we used to say when she was about your daughter's age, so 3, 4, my daughter was just wild. She was a bundle of energy and it wasn't always good. So we always said, we have to channel that energy positively somehow. So it took us a while. Our daughter is actually a competitive swimmer, although not during COVID, but it's an independent sport that is based on a bigger team. She is her own worst enemy in it, but it's all about ensuring that they are safe doing what they want to do. So, for your daughter, take the life vest off, be right beside her or be, close to her. But give her that opportunity and literally sink or swim, right?
Well, it's amazing because you go, over the course of like literally a month from her not knowing how to swim to she can jump in the deep end and float and I got to be right there, but like she can do it. And it's like with my son, he still had a life jacket on at like 7 and like was like, no, I'll just stick around here and I'll wear my life jacket and took it very cautiously. Nothing wrong with that. Just wired completely different. And so like your parenting style has to kind of adjust to be with that
absolutely
that person, and their needs are going to be totally different. So it's not like there's like this playbook, like you raise one kid, okay, I'll apply that to kid 2. It's totally different.
Yeah. And isn't it funny how you can have, 2 parents who have 2 kids and the kids end up being completely different, although all of the metrics that you think are all the same should result in 2 kids that are relatively the same. And it just doesn't. And it's just wild. It's so much fun watching them grow up.
So we do want to make sure that we talk a little bit about your book, one of your many endeavors. So you went to school, just to give a bit of the backstory. You went to school, you became a registered nurse, you found love of your life, you got married, you got pregnant. There's a part in the book that talks about how excited Ed was, how excited you both were. But I really enjoyed the part about, Ed, you leaving a card and the sticks for Ed, and Ed finding them and then running out and being really excited and hugging you and hugging the baby. Everything leading up to, we know the book is about postpartum depression. So everything leading up to that space seemed like it was on track. So then kind of from there, what happened and what led to you experiencing and identifying that you had postpartum depression? And we'll go from there.
Yeah. So prior to having children, I was always an exceptionally driven individual. So I was always working 2 or 3 jobs on top of going to school full time. Even after I graduated, I had 2 or 3 jobs. I had a goal, and that goal was to be a mom, and that goal required a certain amount of money, and to be a good nest egg to get off on the right foot. And going back to our earlier discussion about the neighborhood that I grew up in, being from an affluent neighborhood, I didn't know how skewed my perception of running a household was. I didn't know what kind of funds I would need, how much money I'd have to make. So I just decided I'm going to work my butt off and make as much as I can and see how it goes. Right. And I was successful in that. And after Ed and I got married, we decided that we were going to try for kids right away. We wanted to be young parents. And we were, again, successful in that. And it was a good pregnancy. There wasn't anything huge to speak of, any huge complications or anything like that. But because of my nursing background, I was very scared of epidurals. And it's really silly. Epidurals are very safe. I didn't like needles. I'm still not great with needles. I'm good at giving them, but not receiving them. But needle in my back, I just really wasn't comfortable with that. So I had explained that to my doctor, and we had kind of talked a little bit on different methods of pain management, but we hadn't really gone down that road in depth, because my son came 12 days early, 2 weeks early almost. So we kind of missed that conversation. And so while I was in labor with my son, I didn't want the epidural, but I wanted some kind of pain management. And he said, okay, well, we'll give you a shot of Demerol. And I thought, okay, that's fine. I've given Demerol hundreds of times to my own patients. But I am one of the 1 in a million who's allergic to Demerol. And I didn't know that prior to the labor. I had never had Demerol before. So the last 4 hours of labor with my son, I was hallucinating. I was violently ill. I really don't remember a lot of it. When my son was born, he was also affected by the Demerol. He had low oxygen when he was born, and he was rushed off to the NICU, and he was taken from me. And I actually didn't see him when he was born. He was just rushed off. A few hours later, when I was in my now postpartum room, my husband was in a recliner off in the corner sleeping, and I woke up in an absolute panic, not knowing what had happened, where was my son, what was really going on. Somebody's not telling me something. And I panicked and went to the NICU, and it really, so a little bit of a fast forward, my son's totally fine. But I had worried that he would have cerebral palsy because of the low oxygen. I had nursed a couple of children / adults. They were kind of teenagers. When I was in nursing school, I had cared for 2 individuals that had cerebral palsy, and I knew exactly how that manifested for them. And I was petrified that one wrong decision that I had made would result in a lifetime of challenges for my son. I had done everything right up to that point, and all I could focus on was the fact that one wrong decision would change everything for my son. And it didn't matter to me, not that it didn't matter to me. I didn't realize at that point in time that hundreds of thousands of women received Demerol, that my doctor would have never given me the Demerol if he thought that there was going to be a problem, that it was a one in a million type shot. All I could focus on was I messed up. I made a decision that impacted my son, and it was going to impact him, in my mind, for the rest of his life. And in that moment, something broke in my head. And that's the only way that I can really describe it, because from that moment on, I was petrified that someone was going to realize that I was not capable of being a mother, and that my son was not safe with me, and they were going to come and take my son away. And that's what really, if I can say that there was one thing that really caused my postpartum depression, that's what it was that terror that I was not fit to be a mother. I had horrible recurring nightmares about people coming and taking my son away. I did not trust myself to be with him. I was scared to be with him by myself. The only time that I was comfortable being with him was when I was in my home. And that was literally because I controlled absolutely everything in those 4 walls. So he was on a schedule. We did not deviate from that schedule whatsoever. There were days where I wouldn't get out of my pajamas. There were days where I couldn't clean up the house. I did not cook. I would, nuke some. I think I really liked microwave pizzas back then, so I know I had a lot of microwave pizzas. But it was bad. It was really bad. It was very scary. It's important to know that my son was born at the beginning of June. So a lot of the programs, and this is, again, 14 years ago, a lot of the programs that were available to new moms were just kind of winding down. So there weren't steady programs through the summer that could provide me with a group of individuals that were going through the same thing as me, the same time. I was the first of my friends to have a child, so I didn't have them to rely on. My husband knew that something was wrong, but he didn't realize how wrong things were. I was very good at hiding it. And that's probably because of maybe my nursing experience. I had done some mental health classes and whatnot, and I knew enough to know that something's wrong, but I didn't know enough I didn't want to admit that something was that wrong. So I didn't call my doctor, and my doctor never asked me. The one thing I can say is nobody ever asked me how I was doing as far as a medical professional. Everyone wanted to know how my son was doing. How's the baby? How's he growing? JP, we were talking, yesterday about the 97th and 98th percentile and whatnot. That's what it was all about. But nobody stopped to say, how are you doing, Jess? How are you coping with what's going on here? And that's really something that I would like to see change within Canada is public health nurses not going to visit. I'm not saying going to visit, but checking in with new moms, a phone call once a week just to say, how are you? Because if new moms are anything like me, then you're hiding it desperately because you're scared that you're going to lose your child or that something else is going to happen. So that's really what the summer was like for me. In the September, so my son was 3 months old, I enrolled in a class called Baby Talk, and it was a once a week kind of forum where new moms would get together with the babies and you would talk about everything that you're experiencing and all the challenges that you're having and whatnot. And it's exactly what I needed 3 months earlier. And if I'd had that 3 months earlier, I think that my world would have been different. I think I still would have suffered from postpartum depression, but it would have been, mitigated significantly. So once I started chatting with the other women and realizing that I'm not alone, that my fears are not that outside the box of what all of the moms are feeling, I started being able to cope a little bit better. And it also pulled me out of the house by myself with my son, which was something that I did not do. If I was leaving the house prior to that, my mother was coming, or sometimes my sister would come, or I would have to wait for my husband to come home. And it just, that going outside of the house with my son was something that was just totally beyond what I was even capable of thinking of, let alone doing. So my postpartum depression really lasted about 6 months. And I say 6 months because it was in the December of that year where I really started being able to look back and realize how bad it had actually been. Where I started to think that's not normal. I shouldn't have felt like that. I should have done something. Somebody should have done something. But again, I hit it, and I hit it really, really well. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell. It's something that even to this day, mental health is not, it's just like physical health. You have to maintain it. You have to be aware of it all the time. If I break my arm, I'm constantly going to be a little bit worried about that arm in the future because, it's something that bugs me a little bit, right? I actually, for instance, I sprained one wrist cheerleading in high school, and now 25 years later, I've got arthritis. It's fantastic. But why should mental health be any different than that? You have to constantly be aware of what you are doing and how you are feeling. And it's not just any one thing. It's everything in your life, but you have to be proactive about it. You have to be cognizant of it, I believe. And by being able to be aware of myself and how I am feeling and what my triggers are, I'm better able to navigate life and, plan for what might be a hard day. And I have bad days still, just like anybody else, but I also know what will usually work to help me or to help me get through that day. And I also always know that it's just a phase. And that's one thing that I learned with my children is no matter what they are going through and what challenges there are, and this is for anything in life, physical health, mental health, kids, anything, everything's just a phase. It's a moment in time. It all passes, whether it's good or bad or ugly, you will get through it. And there will be better times ahead.
I have like 100 comments, top-ups, questions. But I'm going to pivot slightly to this week's question from Mama Seth. So this is a segment we've been running this year. My mom had suggested to me that we start incorporating listener questions. And so she's been providing the questions.
Love it.
And
that's awesome.
Yeah. So this week's question is, as a mom of 5, I suffered some serious postpartum depression with my first child, which is me, and my last, which were twins. Sadly, back then, the treatment was stop watching TV or reading anything sad. all these years later, I actually still sometimes struggle with how dark those thoughts were. Do you find that other women find themselves haunted 35 years later by dark postpartum thoughts and feelings? And how do they manage it?
I absolutely do. Now, I can't speak for 35 years or 34 years, but I can certainly speak for 14 years. There are moments where I just have to give my son a hug and make sure he knows I love him. And not even because anything happened or because I'm upset about anything. It's literally just because it's about me. I need to know that he knows that I love him. And that's something that I think, so the first 6 months when I was suffering from postpartum, I would look at my son and feel absolutely nothing. I didn't love him. I didn't hate him. I didn't feel anything. He was just there. I was in charge of feeding him and bathing him and making sure that he was dressed. And there was absolutely nothing else until, again, that December. And I remember the moment when I looked at him and, when you give birth, I had always heard about mothers having that moment where your heart just breaks and you just fall intensely in love with your child. I didn't have that when my son was born. I didn't even see him. I had that moment 6 months later. And there was a dark edge around that moment for me, because as much as I literally can picture in my head where my son was, where I was, and that breaking of my heart, but I also thought, my God, this is what I should have felt for 6 months. What have I done? And that's something that I think I was making up for many years, that I still make up for, that I made sure didn't happen with my daughter. And I think that that's something that for his whole life, I will be doing. And it's just, I need that touch point with him, him specifically. I need, he's taller than me now, but I go and I give him a huge hug. And I even said to him last night, can we have, like he started high school, so I'm all emotional yesterday. And I said, can we just have some mom and Eddie time, because I need that. I think it's something that as a mother, how do you get past that truly? How do you come to terms with that? I don't know. I don't have that answer. It's something that I am consistently working on. Writing my book was extremely cathartic for me. It brought up a lot of stuff that I had actually forgotten. Some of it got included in the book and some of it didn't. And I think for me, talking about it is one way that I am trying to deal with what happened back then. I'm trying to make sure that new moms in the future don't have to feel the way that I feel. Or on the flip side of that moms who did feel that way know that they didn't do anything wrong. This isn't something that you did. This is just something that happened. It's something that there are other people around the world. They know what that feels like. And it's so important to be there, because to be there to support them, because as a mom, you're constantly going through what has happened in the past with your kids and what your kids are going to go through in the future. And you're trying to always make the right decisions and everything. And you're regretting the decisions that weren't right by society standards. And that's something that I don't think any of us ever get over. So for the moms that did go through that, I think it's imperative that they know that you did all you could to provide the best life that you could for your child. And you got through it. And they're older now and they're okay. And you're okay. And you're going to have bad days, but that's what the rest of us are here for. And I think that we need more groups that are willing to talk about that and support people that have been through that. And I think we need more people that are going out on a limb like I'm trying to do and talk about it. It's something that's very hard to talk about. It's something that I've gotten very comfortable with talking about, but I get it that there's a lot of people that can't talk about it. But the more that do, the more we will realize as a society that this is something that we really should support and that we need to accept and be aware of so that we can mitigate it in the future. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does. What, I mean, I don't want to give away the book. I'm probably 3/4 of the way through right now. Is a great book. It is very much, I know you said you held some stuff back. It is still very much a tell-all book. It goes deep, and I think it's really well done. So, I mean, congratulations on releasing the book. What led to you wanting to put together the book and get it out into the world? Where did that come from?
So I took over the family company in 2014. And in 2019, I was very proud of the fact that I was a third generation owner operator. And the stigma around that is that the third generation usually tanks the company. I'm a female in a male dominated industry. So, check there as well. And also that I had hit my 5-year anniversary, and most startups die in the first 5 years. So I felt like I've hit those 3 goals. I want to do something to celebrate that. And I want to give back to the community in a financial way. So I had been looking for an organization that really was a mirror image to my own. And by that, I mean, my company is all through Niagara. So there are 13 different municipalities. We operate in each one of them. So I was looking for an organization that operated in all 13. And I came up with United Way Niagara. Coincidentally, a friend of mine was the chair for their capital campaign that year. So we got in touch, and I committed to a $50,000 donation to United Way. Very happy about that. And they offered me the opportunity to speak at the kickoff breakfast that September. So this is September of 2019. And I took that very seriously. I knew that there would be some important people in the room. And I felt like it was an opportunity for me to, again, establish myself as Jessica Friesen, not Bob Gale's daughter. And I thought by doing that, I should really be honest with people about why United Way, why now, why is this important to me? And that led me to thinking back about my healthcare experience and, helping people and being community minded. And it led me to really thinking about the fact that United Way helps people who suffer. United Way helps people who are having a really hard time in life. And I had suffered. I had suffered with my postpartum depression. So for the first time in my life, I publicly stated that was one of the reasons why I had helped United Way, that I suffered from postpartum depression. And I went into a little bit of detail about the fact that when I looked at my son, I felt absolutely nothing for the first 6 months. And to me, that was just kind of a sidebar. It was a tidbit. It wasn't the big part of my speech. But the response that I received from women in the audience, both day of coming up to me, literally with tears in their eyes, saying, "Thank you so much for being so honest. Thank you so much for being truthful. I suffered as well. And it's nice to know that there are other people out there." Phone calls and emails afterwards. And I thought, I'm okay with my history. I'm okay with what I went through. It's a part of my past, and it's part of what made me who I am today. I started thinking, maybe there's something here. Maybe I should write my journey down. So I started doing that, and then COVID happened. And everything got put on the back burner. And then all of a sudden, one day this past January, I woke up and I thought, no, let's just do it. And I did what I now know is called a dump. And I think it was 3 days. And I just got everything out on paper. And it was the first draft. And I sent an excerpt off to a girlfriend of mine who's a publisher. And I said, Brandy, is there anything here? Like, what do you think? Is this something that could help people? Or is this something that it was good for me just to get it out? And she did a little bit of market research, and she said, Jess, there's not a lot of people that are talking about this. Even this day and age, there's nothing out there in the first person, someone talking about their own experience. There's a lot out there from the experts and the doctors that are saying, do this, do that, do whatever, which is great. But what about real life? What about women who want to talk about what it actually was like for them? And that's how it all started. So Brandy put me in touch with a fantastic coach. And I think it was 15,000 word first draft became a 42,000 word published novel. And, JP, I'm very happy with how you're seeing this, because I was trying to be totally open, totally honest, totally real. I wanted people to know that, you know, I'm a successful businesswoman. On paper, I look like I've got it all together, but that doesn't mean anything. Mental health does not discriminate based on anything. Anybody can struggle with their mental health. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what color your skin is, what your socioeconomic status is. None of that matters. Everybody can struggle with their mental health. And I am certainly an example of someone who does on occasion, but I can still be successful. I can still help people. I can still do what's right for my kids and my husband and my community. And I think that's important for people to understand. So,
Jessica, the book is called This Will Not Break Me. Where can people get it?
So it's on Amazon. This Will Not Break Me, and it's also on my website. So I have printed under my maiden and married name. So it's Jessica Gale Friesen. It's Gale, Gale. And my website is jessicagalefriesen.com. You can go there to purchase the book. You can go on my Facebook, and everything links back there. Facebook is also Jessica Gale Friesen. And I'm really taking this as a starting point, because again, it's all about helping people. And I think that I'm turning 40 in a few weeks, like 2 weeks. And I know, JP, that you are too, not that I'm outing you, but I remember JP and I grew up together for a few years anyways. But I'm really looking at what's the next 40 years going to bring for Jess, and what can Jess do for everybody over the next 40 years. And I'm looking at this as a launching pad. I'll be starting a blog, and I'm looking at doing more speaking about anything that I have experience in. So mental health, community leadership, business leadership, female empowerment. You know, I think that I've got a lot of experience that I can share with people, and that people might be able to benefit from. And I think that it's important to offer that to individuals, because what's the point of getting older if you're not helping the younger generation?
I guess with that, one last question for you, Jess. How are you feeding your mind right now? What are you working on? What any great podcasts or other resources that you're using?
Yeah. So I do a lot of reading, a lot of reading. I read a lot of news. I try to stay very much in touch with what's happening in the world. I also try to read, as strange as this might sound, I read a lot of biographies to learn from other people, either auto or otherwise. But I also, when I really just want to zone out, when things are getting a little too real in my real life, I like to read a really good fantasy book too. And it kind of goes one way or the other for me. So right now I'm actually in the middle of some kind of vampire trilogy, which, it takes you away from the real life. And sometimes you need that break. And I think that for my own mental health, that's very important.
I love a good biography. Is there a recent one you've read that you would recommend?
You know what? I usually try to go for the oddball ones, just because I'm you never know what you're going to find, right? I read Katharine Hepburn's, and that's really interesting. Portia de Rossi is another very interesting one. And Jodie Sweetin from Full House is another very interesting one as well. Both of the younger women struggled heavily, one with drugs, one with anorexia. And, again, looking at women who, or not just women, but people who have been through significant times in their life, significant challenges, and seeing them successful. That's really what draws me to somebody.
Well, Jess, just thank you for taking the time today. I know there's so much more we want to dive into, so I'm sure we'll be talking again in the future. Really appreciate you taking the time to share your experience and your stories, and to tell us more about your book. Thanks again.
Awesome.
It's been great.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for the opportunity. This is fun. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode.
If you like what you heard today and you'd like to tap into your inner wisdom, check us out on thebizdojo.com, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook.
Or send us a message for a free discovery session to coaching@thebizdojo.com.
We hope to hear from you soon. See you next week.